People nowadays fail to realize how huge an impact the original Batman had on the film industry when it was released back in the summer of 1989. The hype leading up to it was like static electricity. It was just in the air. But once it came out, it can't be overstated how much it dominated, making metric shitloads of money. Not merely from the box office grosses, but from all the tie-in merchandise, toys, video games, comic books, albums, and second albums. Richard Donner's Superman a decade prior may have proven serious big-budget superhero movies could be done, but Batman's smash success confirmed it wasn't a one-off fluke. And Hollywood, being the trend-chasing whores that they are, wanted to repeat that success. So there was this odd period where old pulp and pulp-inspired comic characters were being adapted into big-budget Hollywood productions. So while Warner's bashed out Batman sequels, while trying and thankfully failing at reviving the Superman series with Tim Burton and Nicolas Cage, rather than follow suit with popular contemporary superheroes that were benefiting from an early 90s comic boom, the other studios decided to make movies of characters that hadn't been part of the zeitgeist in decades, because that makes sense. As such, the majority of these movies underperformed, failing to become the multimedia juggernauts that the studios were hoping they would be. But that doesn't stop these flicks from being unique and enjoyable time capsules that offer nowadays a refreshing reprieve from all the modern day cape shit. So in this little mini series of Retro Recommends, I'm going to touch upon each film of this loosely connected cycle. I'll point out their obvious flaws, but more importantly, I'll tell you why they're still worth watching today. So I hope you enjoy these reviews, but without further ado, let's get underway. After the out-of-this-world success Warner's had had with Batman, Disney quickly answered a year later in the summer of 1990 with Warren Beatty's Dick Tracy. Created by Chester Gould back in 1931, the pulp-inspired detective in a cold-ass yellow trench and fedora was one of the first true comic book icons. The film pits the square-jawed gumshoe against his arch-nemesis, the mobster Big Boy Caprice, and his army of grotesque lackeys, all the while a mysterious third party with no face manipulates both sides in hopes of seizing power once the dust settles and the shooting stops. A passion project of Beatty's, who directs on top of playing the title character. And despite being over 50 at the time, he convinces with all the running, punching, and shooting required. Granted, the character of Dick Tracy doesn't require much on the emotional spectrum. A lot of the movie is him looking stoically confused at people, but he still plays the part well. The villains are the ones that always are more memorable and are having the most fun, and as such, taking a cue from Jack Nicholson's turn as the Joker, the filmmakers felt they needed a huge star to play their baddie, and they got one hell of a get with Al Pacino as Big Boy Caprice, seeming to relish playing such an over-the-top parody of the roles he built his career off of. With Beatty and Pacino attached, the project attracted a goddamn smorgasbord of insane talent, resulting in a supporting cast that includes the likes of Dick Van Dyke, Glenn Headley, Paul Sorvino, James Caan, Mandy Patinkin, William Forsythe, Dustin Hoffman, Kathy Bates, and rounding out the cast is Madonna, who's what you would call a thespian of limited range. In the right role, she's great, like in A League of Their Own, and this is one of those occasions. Working within her comfort zone as nightclub siren Breathless Mahoney. Playing into the period, she's a woman who lives in a man's world who's used her feminine wiles to survive, and she's grown dead-ass tired of all these boys playing cops and robbers. Now, she wasn't simply cast in this movie for her looks, which at the time were doubtlessly at their peak. Because, man, they couldn't have been more transparent in how much they wanted this to be the next Batman. Around every corner, they tried replicating it. Danny Elfman did the score for Batman, so too did Danny Elfman do the score for Dick Tracy. And too, like Tim Burton's film did with Prince, they wanted to have a coinciding album release by a huge contemporary artist. And they sure as shit got one with the Material Girls' I'm Breathless, which included original songs written by the musical god king Stephen Sondheim and containing the monster hit Vogue, which she used to cross-promote the movie further during her Blonde Ambition tour. But in reality, the real star of this movie, the reason it's worth still bringing up to this day, is its production design. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. This movie looks incredible. It's like a film noir through the filter of 3-strip Technicolor. The world just pops. Beatty wasn't looking to make a realistic movie. He wanted the fantasy world of Gould's comic brought to the silver screen, and he most certainly succeeds on that front. The makeup on all the mobsters are especially memorable. Sure, they may look ludicrous, but they're also perfect realizations of Tracy's exaggerated rogues gallery. It certainly leaves an impression when you see an actor like Will Forsythe transformed into Flat Top. And there lies the fundamental flaw of this movie. I have no idea who it was made for. It's too garish and cartoony for adults, and it's too slow-paced and mature in content for kids. Examples of this tonal schizophrenia is how one of its main characters is a scrappy, streetwise orphan kid named Kid. Something like this is many a times a cinematic death sentence to your movie's credibility. And a baffling chunk of the movie is focused on a paper-thin love triangle between Tracy, Tess, and Breathless, all the while this little twerp tags along. You'd think this movie would be more interested in crime fighting and detective work, but then you have that hard snap to the end shootout. a highlight of the movie. But it's like the only real action set piece in the entire film, which is a huge problem in and of itself. But also, the scene is just a bit much for younger audiences. It feels like a primary color-fueled throwback to his earlier film, Bonnie and Clyde. Speaking of adult content, I don't know why Madonna felt the need to release that sex book in the mid-90s, because I got damn near the full Monty here. PG rating, folks. PG rating. Thanks for being paragons of consistency, MPAA. When released, Dick Tracy was met with generally positive reviews. It won 3 Academy Awards, and while it definitely made money, Disney also spent a hell of a lot making it, with a massive marketing push as well, again trying to mirror Batman. In the end, it didn't even make half of the total grosses of what the Cape Crusader did that previous summer. So it does make sense that a sequel never came to pass. Though bizarrely enough, Beatty every now and then shows up to do interviews nowadays in character as a means to keep holding on to the Dick Tracy rights. It was a film that was hyped up to Batman levels, and despite everything it had going for it, I just don't think it fully delivers. Because in the end, Dick Tracy is just barely a midway matinee, an obvious treat on the eyes, but little else. After the muted success they had had with Dick Tracy, the following year, the House of Mouse again attempted to have a Warner-level success with 1991's The Rocketeer. Unlike all the other IPs here, The Rocketeer was actually a pretty new character. The comics, created by the late Dave Stevens, debuted in 1982, but the whole aesthetic of the character was that of the old-school Hollywood of the 30s, so it was a natural fit with all the rest of this, like, high-adventure shenanigans. It's more pulp than some other self-proclaimed pulp characters. The plot concerns an experimental rocket pack created by Howard Hughes being stolen for a dastardly propulsive world domination scheme. By fate, the pack ends up in the hands of a down-on-his-luck pilot, Cliff Secord, and his engineer buddy, Peavy. And once Cliff uses the rocket pack in an act of heroism, the press dubs him the Rocketeer, and his exploits soon get the attention of the feds, the mob, a Frankenstein monster-looking cat, and even Nazi sleeper agents with Tinseltown on their tail. So now our hero must save his girl and ultimately the day, in a way only celluloid can deliver. Of all the movies on this list, The Rocketeer is the most upbeat and optimistic. It's clearly the reason why The Rocketeer's director, Joe Johnston, got the job helming Captain America: The First Avenger years later. He understood the tone perfectly. He had proven a few years prior with Honey, I Shrunk the Kids that he knew how to helm an FX-heavy flick, which makes sense considering he was one of the original ILM crew, having worked on the Star Wars and Indiana Jones franchises. And that familiarity and confidence is clear with all the flying sequences here. Age has definitely roughed up the edges of the compositing, but it still does a great job capturing the euphoria of humans gaining flight. Johnston's one of the few filmmakers today that I think could make a great Superman movie. He would just need a really solid screenplay, since the writing seems to be what undercuts most of his filmography. But besides a good director, there's a lot more that works here. The late James Horner provides a wonderful film score that taps into old-school Hollywood romanticism. Yes, I think we can all agree that the man poached his own work a few times too many, but it's because he was a very good composer and knew what worked. Then there's the solid as all hell cast. Billy Campbell makes for a lovable, if not dense, himbo Cliff Secord, which I'll touch on more later. The ever-wonderful Alan Arkin rocks it as Secord's mentor and partner in crime. The eternal beaut Jennifer Connelly truly looks at home in this golden age of Hollywood setting. So too does the criminally underrated James Bond actor Timothy Dalton as the Errol Flynn-inspired Neville Sinclair, modulating between smug charm and delicious villainy, seemingly with no effort. And then there's the supporting cast that includes the likes of Terry O'Quinn, Ed Lauter, John Polito, William Sanderson, and the late great Paul Sorvino. This flick radiates warmth like it's an old film projector. It even affects the villains. Case in point, this movie has one of my absolute single favorite honorable villain moments in all media. When the mob boss Eddie Valentine realizes he's been aiding Nazis.
I'm paying you well. Does it matter who I work for?
It matters to me. I may not make an honest buck, but I'm 100% American.
And I love that he ends up helping the feds at the end, fighting the Nazis. I mean, it's just gold. So why don't I love this flick? Well, the big thing holding back The Rocketeer from greatness is its hero. Cliff never really grows in competence as the movie progresses. It's a narrative structure used in countless stories. Let's use Johnston's own Captain America: The First Avenger as a direct comparison. First, he can be completely out of his element and still fumbling with what he's capable of, which is why the rescue at the air show works so well. He should make mistakes at this point. That makes him relatable to audiences. Second time, we should see him showing obvious signs of improvement and greater confidence, though still not perfect. By the third time onward, the hero should be able to show why only he can stop the bad guys. But that never really happens here. Cliff's kind of shit all throughout, which makes him a frustrating hero to get behind despite his overall charm. And it seems like there was more than a few who shared my frustrations. While it was well received at the time of its release, it only made $46 million against a production budget of $35 million. To be fair, that probably had more to do with it competing directly against Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, the second highest grossing movie in 1991, and a damn good movie at that as well. So The Rocketeer was relegated to a cult status, the type of movies that don't work for everyone, but for those that do, it's like a slice of fried gold. I know a lot of people who just adore this flick. I can see the appeal, but it never fully clicks with me. Because in the end, despite its good heart, I find The Rocketeer to be a midway matinee. Five years after Batman hit cinemas, Universal Pictures attempted to enter the pulp superhero fold with 1994's The Shadow. Debuting in 1931 from the mind of pulp writer Walter B. Gibson, of all the characters on this list, you can really see the Batman parallels, which may have to do with the credible accusations that for the early years of the Batman comics, Bob Kane just traced over panels of Shadow comics. You know, when he wasn't screwing over his writer and partner Bill Finger by claiming he was the sole creator of Batman. The Shadow's crossover success back in the Gap was sizable. Dozens of books, comics, movie serials, and arguably his biggest success was the radio dramas, which at one point starred Orson Welles in the title role. But as the decades piled on, Batman began to outshadow, well, the Shadow. So much so now, decades past, most people don't even know the chief inspiration to The Dark Knight. Then in the 1980s, director Sam Raimi attempted to bring the character to the silver screen. It ultimately didn't work out, so instead, he created his own riff on the character with 1990's Darkman. Multiple big names came and went to try to get a film adaptation off the ground until it landed in the lap of Australian director Russell Mulcahy, who brought the same striking visual style he did in movies like Highlander and all the countless critically acclaimed music videos he helmed. The film merges the storylines of the pulps and the radio series. Following World War I, the wealthy Lamont Cranston has turned to a life of vice and evil in the Orient, only to have redemption foisted upon him by a mysterious monk, learning ancient secrets to psychically cloud men's minds and to make himself invisible to others, all except the darkest part of his soul, his shadow. Cranston returns to civilization with a new purpose, to rip out evil by its roots. To do so, he's created a new persona, that of a black-clad Avenger, face obscured by a red scarf. But when the last heir of Genghis Khan emerges with similar powers to that of Cranston, the Shadow must face his inner demons if he has any hope to stop Khan and his schemes of world domination. I've been a fan of the Shadow for quite some time. He's got a unique mythology with some really cool flourishes. Like, I love the fact that every person that he saves, they have to become agents for the Shadow and help him in his war on crime. Which makes sense because he is just one man. It solves a big logistical problem that Batman always runs into. How is he able to make things like the Batmobile or like assemble the Batcave? Like, there has to be people helping him, and you think those people would, like, you know, if they weren't sworn to secrecy, they would just be blurting it out to everybody, like in The Dark Knight. And no doubt, the flick looks and sounds great. Mulcahy knows how to shoot a movie, and Jerry Goldsmith's film score is brilliant, as his work always is. It's got a good cast as well. I always felt Alec Baldwin would have made a stellar Batman back in the day, and this just solidifies that. He looks incredible as the Shadow, and his Lamont Cranston is just an outlet for him to be the boozy elitist asshole we all know he actually is. Now, if he would just stop talking about politics and, you know, focus on practicing good trigger discipline. Another high point is Hong Kong-born John Lone as Shiwan Khan, rocking this whole Mongolian warlord adapting to the modern world without turning into that same tired-ass fish out of water stuff. Then there's the supporting cast with the likes of Penelope Ann Miller, Peter Boyle, Ian McKellen, and the always memorable Tim Curry. And they all get fun, snappy dialogue to work with, but it's in service to a story that's just a snooze. Which is weird since it was written by Jurassic Park and Spider-Man screenwriter David Koepp. Like, I'm sorry, Razorfist, love you, sir, but, like, this movie has the conundrum of having the character that's the most interesting to me in a film that's the most boring of the group. It looks awesome, but it's hollow. It's moving, but to nowhere interesting. It's paradoxically both rushed and sedate at the same time. The action, or lack thereof, is a big problem here. According to the novel and comic adaptations, which were based on earlier drafts of the script, there were a lot more action set pieces that were ultimately cut from the film due to budgetary reasons. What little we end up with feels truncated and uninspired. Even though he looks incredibly badass, the Shadow's kinda terrible at his job. One gets the impression that Universal Pictures did not have the utmost confidence in the project, and cut corners wherever they could, such as canceling an essentially complete video game tie-in for the Super Nintendo. This meant the filmmakers were forced to make do with what they had. Case in point, the film's Hall of Mirrors climax. The set was destroyed by an earthquake during the shoot, and the production weren't given any additional financial support or production leniency to rebuild the set, and that's why the end result has such a frayed edges look to it. This lack of confidence on Universal's part ended up being a self-fulfilling prophecy. Released soon after huge summer hits like The Mask and the motherfucking Lion King, The Shadow underperformed, to put it mildly, making back a reported $48 million against its $40 million budget. So yet again, another one of these classic pulp characters mismanaged by the studios, relegating it to the land of forgotten IPs. There's stuff to enjoy with The Shadow, but it's one of those movies that plays on a lazy Saturday afternoon. It's decent enough, but forgettable as all hell. Also, does anyone else find it funny that the most absurd aspect of this flick is not that there's a millionaire psychic who can cloud men's minds, it's that Shiwan Khan thinks he's the last living heir of Genghis Khan, when 0.5% of the entire world's male population are his descendants? But anyways, in the end, I gotta be honest and say that The Shadow is some silver screen schlock. Nothing terrible, but nothing great either. "1996 saw Paramount release The Phantom in hopes of scoring a Cape Crusader-level success of their own. The Phantom debuted back in 1936, which, yes, means he predated Superman and Batman by a couple years. Created by Lee Falk and drawing inspiration from Tarzan, Zorro, and Mowgli from The Jungle Book of all places. The purple-clad swashbuckler has one foot in pulp while setting a lot of trends in superhero comics still in vogue to this day. The form-fitting outfit that shows off how physically strong our hero is. The white pupilless eyes behind a domino mask, and much like Batman, the Phantom has no powers, but uses his mystique to build up a legend around him. The dark, uncharted jungle of Bengala is home to the Ghost Who Walks, a seemingly undying jungle protector who has sworn to bring justice to the evil pirates of the Sang Brotherhood. In truth, the Phantom isn't immortal, but merely the male heirs of a family tree taking up the mission and mantle each generation. The latest Phantom is Kit Walker, and he must now travel to the concrete jungle to aid an old flame of his, to stop an eccentric power-mad tycoon from obtaining a trio of mystical skulls that when combined grants incredible destructive power. If you can get past the purple, the Phantom I feel works better than almost all these flicks on actually delivering rousing action and swashbuckling. Originally slated to be helmed by Gremlins' Joe Dante, with the studio eyeing Bruce Campbell for the title role, which, finished product notwithstanding, I would have killed to see that. Eventually Dante dropped out, though his contributions earned him a producer credit still. Ultimately, directorial duty settled on Simon Windsor of Quickly Down Under and Free Willy fame, who solidly directs the flick to a crisp and clean 100-minute runtime. Heightened by the underappreciated David Newman's old-school-inspired film score, its driving main theme has been used many a times for trailers, including the final film in this miniseries.
From TriStar Pictures.
But yeah, unlike most of the previous films I've covered in this set, the Phantom doesn't pussyfoot around. 59 seconds, boom, that's all you need in terms of backstory. Brevity's the soul of wit, motherfuckers! Those old school stories were short and sweet and full of action, which is translated here quite well. The stunt work and set pieces are all legitimately cool, feeling like a spandex-clad Indiana Jones. Which makes sense considering this film's screenwriter is Jeffrey Boehm, who wrote The Last Crusade. It kinda has everything. It's like the 31 flavors of high adventure. Fisticuffs, shootouts, sword fights, high-wire rescues from a damaged suspension bridge, plane-to-horse chases through the jungle, our hero in pursuit of the bad guys jumping down an elevator shaft using his pistols as grips on the cable to slow his fall, pursuing bad guys but jumping across moving New York traffic that's totally not a backlot before stealing a police horse to continue the chase with 5-0 in tow. Pirates, led by Shang Tsung, dwelling within a Bermuda Triangle-esque island replete with shark-infested moats, evildoers doing a perfect Michael Jackson Smooth Criminal while firing lasers out of a trio of floating skulls, and volcanoes erupting. And on top of having some impressive variety to its action, it's got a quality cast of admittedly, let's say, B-movie actors. Hansel was right about Billy Zane.
He's a cool dude.
If you follow me, you know that I've already said that I think he would make a great Lex Luthor. And no, it's not just because he's bald, despite how hard his almost supernaturally coiffed wigs may have tried fooling us otherwise. And he should have gotten more roles like this, because he is fantastic here, radiating all kinds of classical heroism. He's an actor that's always excelled at playing larger-than-life characters with the features of a Ken doll, perfectly plucked eyebrows and all. He doesn't brood or treat the gig as some burden. He's just a good guy for the sake of being a good guy. He doesn't even shoot people with his pistols. He just shoots the guns out of their hands. There's an elegant simplicity to that. Also, kudos to the man for toning his body to the point that his costume didn't require a muscle suit underneath to give definition, unlike most dudes donning capes. No, he just got that ripped. His love interest Diana Palmer, played by OG Buffy Christy Swanson, is a great foil. They avoid making her a damsel in distress, but she's also not insufferably unflappable like many modern female leads are. As previously alluded, the demon sorcerer himself, the great Kari Hiroyuki Tagawa, has a minor but always welcome turn as an evil pirate lord. And then there's the ever-reliable James Remar and a then-newcomer Catherine Zeta-Jones in smaller roles as villainous lackeys, with Zeta-Jones in particular standing out as the femme fatale Sala. But if I had to pick a favorite performance in this movie, it is no doubt Treat Williams' turn as Xander Drax. Good God, you know it's something special when the utter joy an actor is having with the role bleeds over into his character. It's the Raul Julia Bison play it big, play it loud school of acting, and it is a blast to watch. Now, even though I've been praising this movie, I understand why this movie gets dogged on. I mean, anyone with eyes can see why. On raw aesthetics, the Phantom has always been a goofy-looking character. I personally think the costume looks great here. I'm honestly amazed Paramount Pictures okayed such a comic-accurate costume when all their contemporaries were adding rubber and nipples everywhere. Some have said that this costume is the key reason why the movie was a failure, but hey man, if Captain America's Star-Spangled Outfit can be taken seriously, I don't think that's the root of the problem.
Raw numbers don't lie though, and The Phantom was not a box office hit. In fact, it was a sizable bomb.
I really think the fundamental reason why the film flopped was down to Paramount Pictures' abysmal marketing of the movie. The first teaser poster is a beautiful piece of pop art, only for them to end up with this god-awful Photoshop nightmare on display with the cringer of a tagline, "Slam Evil." Dude, that makes him sound like some D-grade Christian superhero desperately trying to sound hip. Also, having a PG rating didn't do it any favors, because in the eyes of a lot of people, that automatically means that it's like kids' fare. It's not like there hasn't been PG-rated flicks that push boundaries before. Yes, the movie is goofy, and it wraps up about as elegantly as a Studio Ghibli film, but damn it if it's not a fun time.
Compared to modern cape shit, it doesn't go on for 2.5 hours. It doesn't pretend it has something profound to say. It's just a crowd-pleasing action-adventure calling back to a bygone era. And because of this, despite any silliness, I find The Phantom to be some damn solid celluloid.
Capping off this 90s pulp revival trend in Hollywood was TriStar Pictures' blockbuster The Mask of Zorro. Debuting back in 1919 with The Curse of Capistrano, the heroic outlaw created by Johnston McCulley drew inspiration from characters like Robin Hood and the Scarlet Pimpernel. The character is one of the oldest pulp heroes, which itself influenced the creation of others further down the pipe. While it's true that the Shadow was the direct inspiration, let's say, for Batman, Zorro was an important keystone for both heroes. It's no coincidence that ever since Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, it's become now canon that the movie that Bruce Wayne and his parents saw on that fateful night was the mark of Zorro. It's a little tip of the hat to the character that helped inspire the Caped Crusader. Over the last 100 years, there has been numerous movies starring the Fox. But the 1998 production is considered one of, if not the very best take on the black-clad vigilante. And it is mind-numbing how slept on this movie is. This is a perfect superhero origin story, and it delivers about everything you could possibly want out of a blockbuster action film. Acting as a continuation of the pulp stories, The Mask of Zorro begins with an older Diego de la Vega, the original Zorro, continuing his mission of defending the natives of California from wealthy elites during the end of the Gilded Age. He ends up being caught and imprisoned by his rival, Don Raphael, losing everything he holds most dear like it's an Alexander Dumas novel. Years later, after escaping imprisonment, fate brings him to Alejandro, a wayward soul seeking vengeance against an associate of Don Raphael's. So De La Vega takes Alejandro under his wing and trains him to take on the mantle of Zorro. For when justice is outlawed, the just must become outlaws. Produced by Steven Spielberg's Amblin Entertainment, whose signature movie magic stank is all over this production, with a script co-written by Ted Elliott and Terry Rossio, who penned such films as Little Monsters, Aladdin, Shrek, and The Pirates of the Caribbean. And originally slated to be directed by Robert Rodriguez before ultimately dropping out of the project, due to disagreements he had with TriStar over the budget. Directorial duties in the end fell upon the reliable journeyman Martin Campbell, the dude responsible for reviving the 007 franchise not once but twice with two of the strongest films of the entire series. And rounding out this flick's off-camera star power is the late James Horner, turning up again for one of these pulp movies with another solid film score, doing a stellar job weaving the character's Spanish roots with ample amounts of horns and acoustic guitar into its rousing soundtrack. Simply put, there was oodles of talent behind the scenes working on a project that many would write off as just like a dated throwback. Matching the pedigree behind the camera was the talent in front of it. Antonio Banderas' casting as the title hero was a holdover when Rodriguez was still attached, which makes sense because they're friends, but there is no nepotism present with this casting. Banderas was born to play this character, exuding ridiculous levels of charm and wit, married with a natural athletic prowess for all the various sword fights. It's exactly this reason why the now aged actor was able to pivot his success with this character into the Shrek movies with Puss in Boots. Showing up again on this list and given a much meatier role is Catherine Zeta-Jones as Elena, Don Raphael's fiery daughter who grows infatuated with a mysterious man in black. Her chemistry with Banderas is insane. Every scene with them together, from a lively tango, a steamy confessional, and even an early morning sword fight, drips sexual tension. And she's not merely a trophy of desire for our hero to oogle over before eventually winning. She never plays a victim, and she actually gets to be an important part of the climax, all the while avoiding the pitfalls of the modern-day strong female character. Then there's a pre-reverse flash Matt Lester as the twisted second-in-command baddie Colonel Love. Sometimes it's preferred to have a villain that's just a perfect asshole you want to see bested by our hero, and he does a fantastic job at being said asshole. Adding some real class to these proceedings is Sir Anthony Hopkins and Stuart Wilson as the film's elder statesmen of Diego and Raphael. Hopkins, as always, is the GOAT, getting to be the film's emotional center. But that's not to write off Stuart Wilson. He's fantastic here as well. Much like Gary Oldman, he's a character actor that is able to look and sound really different from role to role. In contrast to the Colonel Love character, Wilson injects a nice sprinkle of humanity into Don Raphael to create a memorable bad guy that we can be just a tiny bit conflicted about.
Get the children out of the plaza immediately!
Children should never have to see the things we do.
And it's really cool seeing older actors like these two taking such an active part in all the swordplay present. Sword fighting being the key word here. It's a huge part of Zorro and swashbuckling movies in general, so it's a good thing that the filmmakers got the legendary Bob Anderson, Olympic gold medalist fencing champion and fight choreographer, to be the film's swordmaster. If his name doesn't sound immediately familiar to you, don't worry, you've seen his work. Some of the best fight scenes ever shot on film are his doing. Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, The Lord of the Rings trilogy, Die Another Day, the 1993 Disney version of The Three Musketeers, Highlander popping up in this list again, The Princess Bride, the original Star Wars trilogy. Hell, he actually stunt doubled as Darth Vader for the fight scenes in Empire and Jedi. Oh, and he also did The Phantom, coincidentally enough. So with a list as amazing as this, it means something when I say that this might be his crowning achievement. The entire principal cast gets to swing some steel. Banderas, Zeta-Jones, Hopkins, Wilson, and Lester all have to work their asses off, and it shows on screen. Avoiding so many of the problems that befall lesser films, the fights are clearly shot, the choreography is precise, all the while illustrating character. It's some of the best swordplay I've ever seen in a movie. The action outside of the swordplay is top tier as well. It's fully aware what the audience expects out of a blockbuster action adventure and delivers that in spades. But on top of that, it's really funny, and here's the hard part, you actually get emotionally invested in its characters. And all this effort paid off in the end. Not only was the film a critical success, but it made a decent chunk of change. But that was kind of it. It eventually got a sequel damn near a decade later with the disappointing Legend of Zorro, which pushed too far towards dumb comedy, but even then that doesn't take away from the original flick. Dudes, just watch The Mask of Zorro if you haven't already. It's awesome. You're missing out if you've never seen it. Because in the end, without question, The Mask of Zorro is full-on top-shelf cinema. So, if you're still with me, let me close with this. Pulp heroes predate the modern superheroes of Marvel and DC, which took liberal inspiration from, be it the Superman Man of Bronze, Doc Savage, or the mysterious masked defender of the innocent and the inky nightmare of evildoers, the Shadow. Whereas characters like Batman are constantly paralyzed by an idiotic no-kill rule that allows mass murderers like the Joker to live, and it seems the only things writers know how to do with Superman and his derivatives is to make them evil, pulp heroes represent an older, incorruptible, unflinching view on morality. Good is good, and evil is evil. We don't need to understand why someone turned to crime. They made their choice. And now it's time for them to reap what they sowed, usually meaning a double-fisted helping of nickel-plated justice. Even the lesser efforts of this 90s revival provide something woefully lacking for most modern heroic fiction. Actual heroes we can look up to and aspire to be. But that's enough for me. I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts. Comment, like, subscribe if you want. It'll help me out. But more importantly, until next time, stay safe out there.